go any further, please let me apologise for the enormous white light behind me. It's insanely bright outside today, so I kind of look like I'm being lit from heaven. Anyway, what I wanted to talk to you about today is the fact that today, the 31st of August, unbelievably marks 20 years since Diana, Princess of Wales, was killed in Paris. As a result, there's been a renewed interest in her. But what really made me stop and think about this wasn't any of the stuff I read in the papers or saw on the TV. It was the fact that I suddenly stopped and realised there are actual adults alive today who weren't born when this happened, and who therefore probably have no idea what a massive event it actually was. I mean, for my parents' generation, the question that always gets asked is, where were you when you found out Elvis had died? For my generation, Diana's death was one of the biggest things we'd lived through. That's the question that we get asked. Where were you when you found out Diana had died? And so I decided that I would commemorate this event by making a video that talks about what it was like when this huge event actually happened. And I guess the first question I should answer is the one I just mentioned. Where was I when Diana died? Well, I was in bed.
Emma, guess who's died?
Oh, I don't know. Who?
Diana!
Diana who?
The princess!
You're lying! Yeah, I'm not sure why I thought he would lie about something like that, but I was tired. And only 14. Anyway, I bounded out of my bed and darted into my parents' bedroom where everybody was huddled around the radio waiting for the news. And when the news came on, they played the national anthem. And that was when you knew shiz had just got real. And once we'd listened to the news headlines where they broke the news that Diana had been killed, basically we just got up, got dressed, and plonked ourselves in front of the TV for most of the day. You kind of couldn't take your eyes off it. We all just wanted to hear more news as it came in. The thing is, if you weren't around then, you really have to understand how famous Diana was. I mean, if she'd been alive now in the era of Twitter and Instagram, she would have millions of followers. This was a level of fame that not many other people have ever matched. She was in the newspapers basically every single day. If she wore a dress, it sold out from the designer almost immediately, and there would be copycat versions on the high street really quickly so that average ladies could try and dress like the princess. She wasn't just famous, she had been married to the future king and had given birth to the next in line to the throne, so this was pretty massive news. In the days that followed, you are talking 10, 12, 15, 20 pages of each newspaper given over to this story, just listing everything that we knew so far. In the 24 hours or so after she died, and going on into the week after she died, radio stations were playing just endlessly sad songs, and TV programs were being cancelled so that we could watch endless news coverage and documentaries about her life. And I'm really not joking about sad songs on the radio, okay? My local radio station played a weird, reworked version of Puff Daddy's I'll Be Missing You that featured the words, "What a life to take, what a tragic waste, we're all missing you," in honour of Diana. And I used to have this habit of lying in bed at night and putting the radio on just to drift off to sleep to. But the DJ actually played Michael Jackson's You Are Not Alone and dedicated it to Princes William and Harry, saying, "The whole of the nation is thinking of you," which we were, but it was just a strange reminder that this news story was just everywhere, and it was bleeding through every part of life. It was one of those things where if a family member phoned you up, the first thing you'd talk about was, "Where were you when you heard the news?" It's awful, isn't it? I can't even begin to stress how big a deal this was, And then when you turned on the TV or you opened up the newspapers, you just saw this sea of flowers outside Kensington Palace. It felt like absolutely everybody was just so moved by what had happened and was so keen to show their emotion about it. Except for the royal family. What the? Yeah, the royals were holed away in Scotland, and whilst I think it's really good that they tried to keep Prince William and Harry out of the limelight, the people really wanted to see some emotion from the Queen. I mean, because the Queen wasn't in residence at Buckingham Palace, there was no flag flying above it. And people didn't like that. People were really, really mad about that. They wanted to see a flag hanging at half-mast in honour of Diana. And they wanted the Queen to come out and echo all of this emotion that everybody seemed to be feeling. And she, for a long time, just sort of didn't. And that made people pretty mad. I mean, eventually the Queen did go on camera and talk about Diana, and a flag was flown at half-mast from Buckingham Palace. But the real emotional point came at the funeral. Princes William and Harry walked behind their mother's coffin as it was pulled past thousands and thousands of onlookers. And watching that was genuinely heartbreaking. William is only a few months older than me, and I, and all of my friends, found that as a result of what had happened, we were all trying to imagine how on earth we would cope if we were put in his position. And none of us could. And as a side note, what you might not know was that at the time, Prince William was something of a heartthrob to teenage girls. I mean, it really wasn't unusual to buy a teen magazine and be flicking through it and see pictures of 911 and Boyzone and the Backstreet Boys and then the future King of England. I mean, I may or may not have had a picture of William on my wall as a teenager. Okay, I totally did, alright? In fact, a part of me harboured the idea that somehow I would catch his eye and we'd meet, and one day I would be a real princess. If Diana was known as a queen of people's hearts, then one day I hope to be known as the monarch of people's minds. Alas, Kate Middleton beat me to it, but it doesn't really matter because I prefer Harry nowadays anyway. But one of the biggest moments of the funeral came when Elton John sang a reworded version of his classic hit Candle in the Wind. The original version was about Marilyn Monroe, but he had changed the lyrics to be about Diana. Goodbye, England's rose, may you will grow in our hearts. Everybody wanted to get their hands on that song, and after the funeral it was released as a single, and it seemed like literally everybody bought it. Everyone. Everyone! To put it into context as to how massive that song is, the Guinness Book of World Records has it listed as the second biggest single of all time. In fact, it was the best-selling single in UK chart history. It was number 1 in the UK, America, Australia, Japan, France, Germany, you name it, it was probably number 1 there. This was a massive deal. In fact, to me, that version of the song is so deeply ingrained in my brain that if I hear the original on the radio, I find myself singing the Diana lyrics instead. And of course, Diana's death actually happened during the summer holidays, but when you went back to school as a teenager, it was a pretty massive topic of conversation. Can you believe it about Diana? I know! Why wasn't she wearing a seatbelt? I know! And the driver was drunk! The paparazzi shouldn't have been chasing her though. Murderers! She was so pretty. Yeah. And she did all that charity work too. Prince William is so fit though. So fit! And sure, things did eventually calm down, but not for a really long time. I mean, there were loads of questions. Was it an accident? Who was really to blame for it? Was she pregnant when she died? Was she gonna marry Dodi Al-Fayed if she had lived? There was just this insatiable appetite for more information about Diana. I mean, she had been the most famous woman in the world when she was alive, and that didn't seem to have changed just because she died. If anything, we were kind of more hungry for information about her. And although eventually life kind of got back to normal, there was a definite lasting change as a legacy. I mean, nowadays, Britons are not as stiff upper lip as we were before she died. We're more known for being open about our emotions and talking about our feelings. We grieve in a more public way now because that's what happened after she died. And that's what we've become used to. We expect our leaders, our monarchy and our politicians to show their emotions. That's not something that we ever really expected before, but after Diana that all changed. And of course, although Diana has been gone for 20 years now, she is still a figure of fascination for millions of people. We want to know more about her life. We want to read stories about her. We're still interested in her position as a fashion icon all these years later. And you only need to look at how open and relaxed and more easygoing William and Harry are as members of the royal family compared to, say, their dad or their granddad to see the effect that Diana had. I guess without being cheesy, Elton John's revised lyrics about her were true. Her candle burned out long before her legend ever will. For me personally, her death will always be one of the biggest news stories of my youth and one of my biggest memories. I hope this video has maybe made it a little bit clearer as to what it was like to actually be around when she died if you weren't. It does make me wonder who is around now whose death would be greeted by the same blaze of publicity and just endless fascination. I can't really think of anybody. Diana was, whatever you thought of her, a fairly unique lady. Anyway, that concludes this week's history lesson. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. You can click on my floaty head if you would like to subscribe. You can watch last Sunday's video here, and I will be back this Sunday with a brand new video. I'll talk to you all soon. Take care, everybody. Bye!